Hello and welcome to my gaming experience. I'm Sword Rush, and this is Legendary Raids in Pokemon Go. Specifically, we're going to look at Moltres first, and then Zapdos in a little bit. Right now, I'm just clicking on and about to start the raid. You'll see I'm in a private party here. They wanted to make sure, because I think in this case, there were a very large number of people, so we were split into groups based on team. We're trying to get the most amount. So for catching each of the legendary Pokemon, you get a number of balls based on your performance and the number of people on your team, and whether your team is controlling the gym that it's at, and a bunch of other stuff. So the goal is to get into as big of groups as possible based on teams, so that you get more of these premier balls to be able to throw at the legendary Pokemon, which in and of itself is just a silly concept. I'm not quite sure. I feel like they could have done a much better job with these legendary raids, and I'm going to try not to rant too much about it. I have pretty strong feelings, mainly because the legendary Pokemon have a very low catch rate, but we'll get into that in a little bit once we actually get to the catching session. So you can see that there's 18 people in this group, so there's a lot. I think there was 3 different groups in this place, at this particular gym standing around, so there's a lot of players there. In Moltres is actually very easy to beat. Actually, honestly, so is Zapdos. Zapdos has a lot of... you get an okay-sized group, you can take it down, but Moltres in particular has a double weakness to rock, and water Pokemon are very, very common everywhere, or pretty much everywhere, so it's very easy to get the Pokemon you need to be able to take down Moltres. Golem is one of the better ones because it can learn double rock moves and has double resistance to fire, or at least single resistance. I can't remember at the moment. Omastar is also very good if you had already gotten it with the double rock moves. My personal one does not have double rock. It has water gun first and then a charge rock move, but it's still amazing even with the decreased moves. Vaporeon is also very good. Also, Gyarados is good with Hydro Pump, and then Dragonite is also a good choice. And you can see that's what most people picked here. Tyranitar also gets a good rock move that you can use, so he's a good one. He also has a lot of bulkiness, as opposed to Golem. Golem has less health, so you see mine died quicker than that other Tyranitar in the background. But honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot. I think me and one other person were able to take down to less than half its health before we timed out, so you really don't need very many strong players to be able to do it. This particular one, I don't remember what move Fire Blast, that's what it is. This one is Fire Blast. Overheat is the best move, so Fire Blast is kind of nice because it's not quite as strong. You can see here I'm doing my best to dodge, but honestly, when you're doing these raids, there's a glitch still in the game that an attack can actually wipe out all of your health and kill your Pokemon even though you dodged. So right there it just happened. I dodged it and I still did. So my Pokemon is still there, sort of, but it's not really dealing any damage, and it's a whole big mess that it's basically been in the game since the game's release, so it's really frustrating that they still have it, but that's fine. I moved on to Vaporeon and we've beat the battle. So with a lot of players, these legendary raids don't take much effort. So after you get done with it, you get the same normal amount of cool items. I happen to get 2 fast TMs this time, which is the most important ones for me, because I've been looking to change a whole lot of Pokemon's moves. So you can see, defeating the boss, you get some balls, depending on your damage and gem control, and then the contribution to your team. So I got 11 here to be able to catch Moltres. I tried out a trick this time, because this was actually the very first Moltres that I tried to get. Is the closest Moltres that appeared to where I live, so we basically ran over there as soon as it was reported. But before that, I'd been reading about, not necessarily a trick, but it's important to note that it can be easier to catch a legendary Pokemon if you use a Nano Berry first, because Nano Berries reduce the amount of movement that the legendary Pokemon will have. So that allowed me to do this great throw right here. Even though it jumps out, the Nano Berry's effect will carry over to the next ball, which is nice because then it makes, you can get some really good throws here without having to worry about wasting balls, because basically, that was a really bad throw. Basically, if you get like 9 throws, all with greats and golden raspberries, you have pretty much a 60% chance or better of catching the legendary Pokemon, which is still kind of lower than you would hope, but it's still whatever we got right now. And like I said, I have big problems with that because it definitely feels like the mechanic of there's a sort of mechanic concept called a chest and key, and so the game sort of makes available at sort of rare times a chest that has a reward, and then it'll ask you to purchase a key to be able to open that chest. So here, the chest is catching this Moltres, and the key is the raid pass they use to get into the battle. But the problem is that with such a low catch rate, they're effectively removing that reward from you just at the last second. It's like the first throw you get, I think, is still... these legendaries are at 3%, Lugia is at 2%, so actually right now, I didn't say it earlier, but Articuno is already gone. Moltres was the second legendary bird to be released. Lugia has been here the whole time. I don't necessarily... It's technically a legendary bird, but I don't really count it as the 3 original legendary birds. So Articuno is already gone. I've already caught one. I don't have any video of it because I don't know. I didn't bother doing it. Actually, Moltres is on my team, but here in a second we're going to switch over to Zapdos. So anyway, that mechanic is like effectively robbing you of that reward for having purchased their key. So it's really frustrating that they allowed this to be included in the game. Okay, so here's Zapdos. I'm going to quickly go through. Rock is really good against it, so Golem is an excellent choice against Zapdos. One of the better ones, actually. Tyranitar is a pretty good choice. Piloswine, actually, that's the newcomer here, which is really cool that Piloswine is able to get into here because normally you wouldn't necessarily think of Piloswine being a good Pokemon for this, but its ice moves are super effective, while its ground typing makes it strong against electric moves. So that's all that Zapdos has in this game right now is electric moves. It doesn't have any flying moves. So Piloswine deals super effective damage, and Zapdos deals not very effective damage, which is really good. It means that Piloswine lasts a lot longer. But again, Zapdos is one of those that you can have just an okay sized group. You can see there's 13 people in this one. We take down Zapdos with, I think, over 200, maybe just under 200 seconds left. So it's really not that big of a deal with a decent number of players that have good Pokemon. So you can see Donphan right there is probably a poor choice because ground moves are not very effective against Zapdos. It does about 70% of its regular damage, which is kind of bad. But it doesn't really matter in this case because it's probably a pretty decent Donphan, so that's okay. You can see I have the glitch going right now, but I've moved on to my Tyranitar. My Tyranitar has a Stone Edge attack, which is super effective against Zapdos, and so that's good, but it's also very weak, this particular one, so I get one-shotted out of the game. But here we go, over to Piloswine. Piloswine's is a good choice. If you want just a regular generalist, Dragonite is actually very, very strong in this case, because it's neutral. Electric is neutral against it because it resists with the Dragon type, but Flying type is weak against it, so it's neutralized in effect as far as damage is concerned. And Dragonite deals normal damage against Zapdos, but Dragonite has the advantage of a very, very high attack value. So he's really good to choose in here. As you can see, I didn't get to my third Pokemon, or didn't get to my fourth Pokemon, which I believe was a Dragonite in this case. So, oh no, I guess the fifth Pokemon was Dragonite. But here we go. We won this battle. Unfortunately, I did not catch this Zapdos, and this was my first Zapdos. I just recorded it earlier today, and I'm going to zoom through a little quickly the actual catching portion of it, because as you can see, I only got seven balls in this one because most of the players in this part were actually Mystic. So Instinct players and Valor players did not get very many chances to throw against the Zapdos. So, and also not going into this not knowing how Zapdos would react, this Zapdos in this case dances around the screen, which is by far the worst type of movement from a Pokemon. It's very hard to predict when they're going to do it, and they kind of just randomly move around the screen, so you don't really have any... if you're just going into it, it can be very hard to hit, and the Nanoberries, in this case, definitely help. You really need to do it. So here is the second Zapdos. I slowed this one down because I catch it pretty quick, if I remember correctly. This gym was actually almost... There were double Zapdos gyms. There were double Zapdos raids. They were right next to each other. So we went from that previous one, that first one that I did that failed to catch Zapdos on, and went to the second one where I was able to catch Zapdos. So the other thing that I want to mention right now is you don't actually have the number of Premier Balls that you're receiving from the game. You actually have one less because the very last ball will always fail, and even Niantic has admitted that this is the case. They just recently came out and said, hey, we recognize this as an actual bug. So beware that you'll have just one less ball as you go out there and catch Zapdos, if that's what you're going to do. The legendary Pokemon are really cool. I wish we could do more with them, attack them, put them in gyms and such, but until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you again next time.